Being the only human professor at the Galactic Institute of Higher Learning had its perks. For one thing, I never had to worry about another faculty member stealing my parking spot. They were all too worried I might hunt them down through the halls for days until they collapsed from exhaustion, which, to be fair, I absolutely would. I adjusted my nameplate, Professor Deck Hardwood, Earth Studies and Xenobiology, and surveyed my new class. 30 pairs of eyes, stalks and sensory clusters stared back at me with varying degrees of trepidation. A Floaxian in the front row was vibrating so rapidly they were starting to blur. "Welcome to Xenobiology 101, focusing on Earth's most fascinating species," I began, pulling up the first hologram. "Today we'll be discussing predator-prey relationships and survival adaptations. Let's start with something simple." The image of a house cat materialized above my desk. Several students cooed appreciatively. "Oh, how adorable," chirped Memex Plix, their antennae waving in delight. "Is this a companion species?" "Actually," I smiled, "cats are one of Earth's most efficient killing machines. They hunt for pleasure, often playing with their prey for hours before delivering the final blow. They can go from purring to murder in 0.3 seconds. A horrified silence fell over the classroom. Someone whimpered. "But yes, they're also companions. Here's mine at home, playing with a laser pointer." I switched to a video of Mr. Whiskers attempting to catch the red dot, much to the class's confused distress. You keep a recreational killer in your dwelling?" asked Vaughn, their crystalline structure clouding with anxiety. "Most humans do. We find their murderous tendencies charming." I moved to the next slide. "Now let's talk about something really interesting. Crocodiles." The hologram shifted to show a massive saltwater crocodile. 3 students immediately went into defensive hibernation. The Floaxian's vibrations reached ultrasonic frequencies. "Professor," a brave voice piped up from the back, "it belonged to Zen 12, one of my more inquisitive students." Their mechanical chassis whirred as they raised an appendage. "Our preliminary research indicated Earth was a Class 3 death world, but surely these statistics must be an error. No species could evolve to survive alongside such perfectly adapted killing machines that can go years without food while waiting for the perfect moment to strike," I helpfully supplied. "Oh, but they can, and do. In fact, humans used to hunt them for sport." The class stared at me in collective horror. I could practically see their worldviews crumbling. "But how?" Zen 12's voice had dropped to a whisper. "That's the fascinating part." I leaned forward, unable to suppress my grin. "We outlasted them. Humans are persistence predators. We don't just hunt with teeth and claws, we hunt with patience. Time is our weapon." In the front row, the Floaxian finally stopped vibrating, mainly because they'd fainted. "Perhaps we should take a short break," I suggested, checking my watch. "When we return, I'll tell you about something really terrifying. Canadian geese." As my students fled the room with varying degrees of dignity, I couldn't help but chuckle. We hadn't even gotten to the part about how humans used to track prey across vast distances, running them to exhaustion over days of pursuit, or how we developed throw weapons to hunt at range, or how we're one of the few species that actively seeks out spicy food, essentially eating pain for pleasure. I really loved my job. The dean would probably be paying me another visit soon, concerned about the increasing number of students requesting transfer forms after my lectures. But that was fine. I could wait them out. After all, we humans are very, very good at waiting. When my students finally trickled back into the classroom, they clustered near the exits, all except Zen 12, whose curiosity apparently outweighed their survival protocols, and the still unconscious Floaxian now propped up in their seat by a concerned classmate. "Now then," I said, dimming the lights for dramatic effect, "let's talk about patience." The hologram flickered to life, showing a crocodile lying perfectly still in murky water. Several students instinctively stepped back, which was impressive considering most of them were already pressed against the walls. "The saltwater crocodile can go up to 2 years without eating a single meal," I explained, pacing slowly across the front of the room. 2 years of perfect stillness, 2 years of waiting. Just waiting. But why? Make's Plix's antennae were now tied in actual knots. Why not simply acquire sustenance through more reliable means? Because, I grinned, sometimes the perfect moment is worth waiting for. You see, crocodiles didn't become one of Earth's most successful predators by rushing things. They've outlasted the dinosaurs. They've survived multiple extinction events. They've perfected the art of patience. I switched to the next slide, showing a crocodile launching from the water to snatch its prey. 3 more students entered defensive hibernation. Fascinating adaptation, Zen 12 commented, their optical sensors whirring as they zoomed in on the image. Though surely no sentient species would employ such primitive hunting methods. Oh, you'd be surprised, I chuckled. Humans have learned a lot from crocodiles. In fact, we've improved on their methods. The class collectively shifted away from my desk. Take corporate meetings, for instance, hours of sitting perfectly still, waiting for the perfect moment to present your idea. Or social media. Humans can lurk for years without posting, just waiting for the perfect moment to drop the perfect comment. We've evolved the crocodile's patience into an art form. Professor, a trembling voice called from the back, are you suggesting that humans actively emulate ambush predators? Emulate them? We've surpassed them. A crocodile can only wait 2 years, but humans, I leaned forward conspiratorially, we can wait decades to execute the perfect plan. We call it playing the long game. The Floaxian, who had just regained consciousness, promptly fainted again. Consider this, right now, somewhere on Earth there's a human waiting to use a joke they thought of 3 years ago. They're just waiting for the perfect context. Another human is holding on to a comeback from an argument they had in primary school, waiting to run into that same person again. Someone else has been carefully maintaining a social media presence for 5 years, building up to a single elaborate pun. But that's... Max Plix's antennae had completely tangled themselves. Insane, I suggested. Perhaps, but effective, absolutely. Which brings us to our next topic. How humans turned waiting into a competitive sport. Has anyone heard of fishing? The room erupted into chaos. Vaughn's crystalline structure shattered in panic, sending prismatic shards everywhere. Zen 12's cooling fans kicked into overdrive. Someone triggered the emergency meditation chamber in the corner. I checked my watch again. We still had 30 minutes left in the lecture, but judging by the increasing number of hibernating students and the smoke coming from Zen 12's processors, it might be best to call it early. For homework, I announced to the conscious remainder of the class, please read Chapter 3, Why Humans Consider Patient Predators Cute, a study of wait times in DMV offices. And remember, the pop quiz could come at any time. It could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be in 2 years. You'll never know when it's coming, until it's too late. As the classroom emptied with remarkable speed, I couldn't help but notice that the Galactic Institute's emergency response team was getting much better at their response time. They were already waiting in the hallway with anti-anxiety patches and portable hibernation pods. I really needed to send them a thank you note, perhaps in a few years, when they least expected it. Professor Hardwood, Dean Zulax's tentacles were cycling through various shades of puce. Would you care to explain why the Institute's emergency response team is requesting a budget increase specifically for your classroom? I sat comfortably in the chair across from the dean's desk, noting how they kept all 8 eyes fixed on me. Classic prey behavior. I'd been waiting for this meeting ever since I'd submitted my lesson plan last semester. Teaching is all about engagement, Dean Zulax, I replied cheerfully, and my students are very engaged. They're very unconscious, the dean corrected, waving a data pad with their 9th tentacle. According to this report, you've triggered the emergency hibernation response in 17 different species. The Floaxians are demanding specialized anti-vibration dampeners for their seats, and the therapy pod bookings have increased 300%. But retention rates are up, I pointed out. Nobody sleeps through my classes. Well, except for the ones in hibernation. But that's more of a survival response than boredom. A soft chime interrupted us as Dean Zulax's secretary, Max Bloop, oozed into the office. Sorry to interrupt, but the Galactic Education Board is on line 3. Something about a formal inquiry into, quote, unnecessarily traumatic teaching methods and excessive predatorial behavioral displays, end quote. Thank you, Memex Bloop, the Dean sighed, all 8 eyes blinking in sequence. Please tell them I'll call back in. They glanced at me nervously. 2 years. That's the spirit, I beamed. You're learning already. This isn't a joke, Professor. The board is concerned about your methods, especially after that demonstration with the coffee maker. Ah yes, the patience of the drip brew versus the instant gratification of synthesized caffeine. A perfect metaphor for predator-prey relationships. You made the entire administrative staff watch coffee drip for 4 hours, and they'll never forget the lesson, will they? I leaned back, steepling my fingers. Besides, I brought cookies. The cookies had raisins in them. You told everyone they were chocolate chips and then said, and I quote, "Patience reveals unexpected truths." I shrugged. Practical demonstration of ambush tactics in a controlled environment? It'll be in my next paper, The Raisin of Doubt, Trust and Deception in Human Snack Dynamics. Dean Zulax's tentacles had progressed to a concerning shade of mauve. They took a moment to compose themselves, which involved several deep breaths through their gill slits. Professor, while I appreciate your innovative approach to xenobiology education, the board requires certain standards of... They paused, searching for the right word. Non-traumatic learning, I suggested helpfully. Precisely, we need to find a way to teach about Earth's wildlife without causing mass panic. Perhaps we could focus on some of your planet's less aggressive species. Excellent idea. I've been meaning to do a lecture on dolphins. Perfect, gentle, playful aquatic mammals, much better than crocodiles. Did you know they're one of the few species besides humans that kill for fun? I added brightly. They play catch with baby seals. Sometimes they pass them back and forth for hours before... Well, that's probably better saved for the advanced class. The Dean's tentacles had gone completely white. Perhaps we should stick to plants? A wonderful idea. I've been wanting to cover the Venus flytrap and other carnivorous plants. Did you know some of them can count? They actually keep track of how many times they've been touched before snapping shut. Talk about patience. Professor Hardwood, the Dean's voice had taken on a slightly desperate edge. Surely there must be some non-predatory aspect of Earth biology we could focus on. Well, there's always the defensive adaptations, like how some plants can recognize their relatives and will literally strangle competing species to protect their family members. Or how trees communicate through underground fungal networks to warn each other about threats. Some scientists call it the Wood Wide Web. The soft chime sounded again as Mem-X Bloop returned. Dean Zulax, the Galactic Education Board has sent an updated inquiry. They're now asking about the possibility of reclassifying Earth from a Class 3 to a Class 4 death world, citing new concerns about, quote, everything, literally everything on that planet, end quote. I pulled out my tablet. Perfect timing. I've just finished my proposal for next semester's course. Everything on Earth is trying to kill you, a comprehensive study, complete with field trips. The Dean's left eye began to twitch. Field trips? Don't worry, I'll wait until the second semester to suggest those. After all, I smiled, patience is a predator's greatest weapon. All 8 of the Dean's eyes rolled back as they slumped onto their desk. Mex Bloop quickly pressed the emergency response button, which had recently been relocated to right outside the Dean's office for convenience. As the response team rushed in with their anti-anxiety patches, I couldn't help but feel proud. It had taken 3 meetings, but I'd finally gotten the same reaction from the administration that I got from my students. Now that's what I call consistent teaching results. The Galactic Institute's emergency alert system had a peculiar sound, something between a gentle wind chime and a panicked scream. I'd grown quite familiar with it over the semester, though usually it was localized to my classroom. This time it was echoing through the entire campus. Warning, the automated system announced in 15 different languages. Unidentified organism detected in primary hydroponics lab. Lab sealed. Security protocols engaged. Please remain calm and proceed to designated safe zones. I was in the middle of explaining to my class why sloths were actually terrifying when the alert sounded. Most of my students had already assumed their species-specific defensive positions, so the warning was a bit redundant. Class dismissed, I announced, unless you'd like to observe a practical demonstration of Earth crisis management techniques. Zen 12's optical sensors brightened with interest. The rest of the class made a break for the exits with impressive speed, though the floaxion had to be carried out, still vibrating at ultrasonic frequencies. Fascinating, Zen 12 commented as we made our way toward the hydroponics lab. You appear to be moving toward the danger rather than away from it. Is this another example of human predatory behavior? More like human curiosity, I replied, though there's significant overlap. We found Dean Zulax and a cluster of security personnel outside the sealed lab doors. The Dean's tentacles were cycling through colors so rapidly, they looked like a malfunctioning disco ball. Professor Hardwood, this is a secured area. Please return to the designated safe zone and... Why are you smiling like that? Because, I said, peering through the observation window, I believe I can help. What exactly is the situation? The head of security, Commander Vax, stepped forward. Their exoskeleton clicked nervously as they reported. Unknown organism appeared in Lab 7. Highly mobile, apparently aggressive, and resistant to standard containment measures. It's already consumed 3 experimental fungi colonies and a graduate student's thesis project. Ah, I nodded sagely. And I assume you've tried the usual methods, force fields, stun beams, temporal freezing? All ineffective, Commander Vax confirmed. The creature appears to adapt to each method we employ. We're running out of options. I pressed my face closer to the window, watching the creature dart between hydroponic tanks. Have you tried... waiting? Waiting? The Dean's tentacles froze mid-color change. Professor, this is hardly the time for your Earth predator philosophy. On the contrary, I grinned, this is exactly the time. You see that pattern? The way it moves? Classic hunting behavior, but it's getting frustrated because you keep changing tactics, so instead of reacting. I pulled up a chair and sat down. We wait. Wait for what? Commander Vax demanded. For it to make a mistake. Everything makes mistakes eventually. Patience is a predator's greatest weapon, remember? Fascinating application of theoretical principles, Zen 12 commented, their cooling fans whirring with excitement. But surely there must be a more active solution. Oh, I'm being very active, I assured them. I'm observing, learning. Every movement tells us something about our friend in there. For instance, notice how it favors the left side of the lab, and how it returns to that dark corner every 7.3 minutes? The security team exchanged glances. The Dean's tentacles had settled on a worried Lavender. Professor, they began, the board of directors will be here in 20 minutes expecting this situation to be resolved. Perfect, I said. That's about 3 more patrol cycles. Just enough time for our friend to get comfortable with the pattern, to think it's in control. That's when we'll have our moment. And then what? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small package. Then we use this. Commander Vax leaned forward. Is that some kind of advanced Earth weapon? Better, I smiled. It's a packet of cat treats. I recognized our little friend's movement pattern. It's Mr. Whiskers. Your recreational killer escaped into the hydroponics lab. The Dean's tentacles went pale. Cats are excellent escape artists. He must have slipped out while I was setting up this morning's demonstration on shark feeding patterns. Don't worry, though. He's just playing. Playing? He destroyed 3 years of fungal research? Yes, and he's very proud of himself. Now watch and learn. I stood up, opened the lab door just enough to toss in the treats, and waited. Exactly 7.3 minutes later, Mr. Whiskers trotted out of his hiding spot, belly full of stolen fungi and cat treats, looking extremely pleased with himself. I scooped him up as the security team stared in disbelief. See? I scratched behind his ears as he purred. Patience wins again. though we should probably add Earthhouse cat to the list of restricted organisms on campus. Agreed, the Dean said weakly. Commander Vax, please update the security protocols. Professor Hardwood, please keep your recreational killer secured during class hours. And someone please help the mycology department's graduate student. I believe they're still in hibernation under their desk. Incredible. Zen 12's optical sensors were recording everything. You used the Predator's own patterns against it. Will this be on the exam? Everything is on the exam, I reminded them cheerfully. You just never know when. As we walked back to the classroom, Mr. Whiskers still purring in my arms, I couldn't help but feel satisfied. It's not every day you get to demonstrate the practical applications of human hunting techniques. Though I did feel a bit bad about the fungi colonies, but only a bit. After all, in the great galactic scheme of things, humans weren't the only species that had mastered the art of patient hunting. We just happened to be the ones who turned it into a teaching opportunity. The thing about revelations is that they rarely arrive on schedule. Sometimes they take their time, lurking in the background like a crocodile in murky water, waiting for the perfect moment to surface. In this case, that moment came during the annual Faculty Appreciation Dinner. I was sitting at my usual table, the one everyone else avoided, enjoying my synthesized steak and watching Mr. Whiskers charm treats out of unsuspecting staff members, when Zen 12 approached with an entourage of students. Professor, their vocal synthesizer was pitched higher than usual. We've been analyzing the data from this semester's lessons, and we've reached a rather disturbing conclusion. Only one, I smiled, cutting into my steak. I must be losing my touch. The Crocodiles, Max Plix buzzed nervously, their antennae now permanently knotted from my classes. They weren't really the point of those lessons, were they? I took a slow, deliberate bite of steak. Go on. The patient-predator lectures, the waiting games, the pop quizzes that never came. Zen 12's cooling fans were working overtime. It was all a practical demonstration, wasn't it? We weren't just learning about Earth's predators, we were experiencing human hunting techniques firsthand. The Floaxian started to vibrate again, but their new dampeners kept it subsonic. An interesting theory, I said, dabbing my mouth with a napkin. What led you to this conclusion? The coffee maker incident. Vaughn's crystalline structure shimmered with revelation. You made us watch it drip for 4 hours, but you never actually served the coffee. The anticipation was the point. You were conditioning us to recognize the signs of a patient predator. And the raisin cookies, added another student. The disappointment of expecting chocolate chips. You were teaching us about the element of surprise in hunting tactics. Even now, Zen 12's optical sensors whirred as they focused on my plate. You're consuming synthesized animal protein while maintaining direct eye contact with the group. A subtle reminder of your predatory nature. I put down my fork. Very good observations, but you're missing the biggest demonstration of all. The group collectively took a step back. Even Zen 12's curiosity seemed to war with their self-preservation protocols. The entire semester, I continued, has been one long hunting demonstration. Every lecture, every random tangent, every seemingly disjointed lesson, all building to this moment, this revelation, the one you thought you discovered on your own. Understanding dawned across various alien features. You waited, Max Plix whispered, all semester, just for this moment. The perfect teaching moment, I agreed, when you would not only understand the lesson but feel it, experience it, remember it. But that would mean the Floaxian's dampeners were starting to smoke. You planned this from the beginning. The crocodile lecture, the cat escape, the coffee demonstration, all of it. Professor, Zen 12's voice had dropped to a whisper. Exactly how long have you been planning this lesson? I checked my watch. Remember that curriculum proposal I submitted when I first applied for this position? That was 3 years ago. The dean's voice came from behind the group. Their tentacles had gone completely transparent, something I'd never seen before. Like I said in class, I smiled, crocodiles can only wait 2 years. Humans can wait much longer. The revelation rippled through the faculty dinner like a shockwave. 3 professors entered spontaneous hibernation. The Floaxian's dampeners finally gave out with a small pop. Somewhere in the background, Mr. Whiskers knocked a glass off a table, timing it perfectly to punctuate the moment. But that would mean Zen 12's processors were practically smoking. Every class in the galaxy, I confirmed cheerfully, every lecture on Earth's predators, every seemingly random tangent about patient hunting techniques, they're all connected. All part of one very, very long lesson. A lesson about why humans are the most dangerous predators of all. Because you can wait, Vaughan's crystalline structure chimed with understanding. Because we can wait, I corrected, and because we can teach others to understand that we're waiting. It's one thing to be a patient predator. It's another thing entirely to make sure everyone knows you're a patient predator. The Dean's tentacles had begun to regain their color, shifting to a thoughtful blue. The Galactic Education Board. They're going to need to update more than just Earth's classification, aren't they? Oh yes, I grinned. And I've been very patiently waiting 3 years to submit my report on human educational methodologies. Would anyone like to help me compile the data from this semester's practical demonstration? The only response was the soft thud of multiple species entering emergency hibernation mode. Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to jump into my lap, purring loudly. I scratched behind his ears, watching the chaos unfold around us. "Good kitty," I whispered. "Perfect timing." The thing about changing the galaxy's perspective on an entire species is that there's a lot of paperwork involved. The Galactic Education Board's official reclassification of Earth took 6 months, 3 congressional hearings, and 1 very long presentation where I basically just stood silently at the podium for 4 hours, proving my point about patience. They did eventually create a whole new classification system, since apparently Death World doesn't quite cover planet full of intelligent persistence predators who treat waiting as a competitive sport. We're now classified as a Class P world. The P officially stands for persistent, but everyone knows it really means predatory. Remarkably, enrollment in my classes tripled the following semester. It's a defense mechanism, Dean Zulax explained during one of our now weekly meetings. Their tentacles had developed a permanent slight twitch, but they'd stopped changing colors every time I walked into their office. Students figure if they understand how humans think, they'll be better prepared. And are they? I asked, sipping my coffee. I'd started bringing my own coffee maker to these meetings. The slow drip seemed to help keep everyone focused. Well, the voluntary hibernation rates are down, they admitted, though I'm not sure if that's because they're less afraid or just better at hiding it. Progress is progress, I nodded sagely. The Dean's tentacles writhed thoughtfully. The board is quite impressed with your innovative teaching methods. They're considering implementing similar long-term demonstration techniques across other disciplines. I heard the quantum physics department is planning a practical joke that won't pay off for 12 years. I grinned. Something about Schrodinger's cat that Mr. Whiskers helped them design. Yes, well, speaking of your recreational killer. The Dean slid a datapad across the desk. The security team has submitted a proposal for a new course, Advanced Predator Psychology, Understanding Earth Domestic Pets. They seem to think it would be valuable for emergency response training. Let me guess. The hydroponics department seconded the motion. They've replaced the fungi colonies, but the graduate student still goes into hibernation at the sight of anything furry. I picked up the datapad, already sketching out lesson plans in my head. You know, there's this earth animal called a hamster. Looks completely harmless. Tiny, fluffy, keeps food in its cheeks. Did you know they sometimes eat their own young? The Dean's tentacles went briefly purple before they got them under control. Perhaps we should start with something less surprising? Oh, like rabbits, they look adorable, but they're actually cannibals when stressed, or guinea pigs. They purr like cats, but they were once worshipped as war gods. Or maybe gerbils? Did you know they can... Professor, the Dean interrupted hastily, Perhaps we should focus on the administrative details first. Of course, I smiled, settling back in my chair. Take all the time you need. I can wait. The dean's left eye started twitching again. In the end, they approved the course along with my proposal for a full Earth Studies department. Zen 12 signed on as my teaching assistant, their curiosity finally overriding their self-preservation protocols entirely. The Floaxians started a support group for students dealing with predator-induced anxiety, which somehow became the most popular club on campus. Even Mr. Whiskers got an official faculty position as Practical Demonstration Specialist. But the real victory came 3 years later when I overheard a group of senior students counseling some freshmen. Remember, they were saying, when a human smiles and says they can wait, that's not a surrender, that's a warning. I couldn't help but smile. It had taken 5 years, 3 curriculum revisions, and countless hibernation incidents, but finally, they understood. Humans aren't just another predator species. We're the ones who turned predatory patience into an art form, weaponized waiting itself, and then taught the galaxy to appreciate it. Because that's the real secret about humans. We're not just predators, we're teachers. And there's nothing more dangerous than a predator who wants to share their knowledge. Though I still haven't given that pop quiz, maybe next semester, or the one after that. Or maybe I'll wait a few more years. After all, timing is everything.